Is the Dark Sun campaign setting compatible with 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons play?
Shake your moneymaker! Ooh, 2 hits! Yeah!
To answer this question, I'm first going to determine what made Dark Sun unique when it came out. What made it stand out from all the other campaigns and all the other games of the time? What made Dark Sun, Dark Sun? Once I have laid out the quintessential elements that make a Dark Sun what it is, I'm going to do the same for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. What core rules are essential to the game? What rules do you have to use to call a game a 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons game? After I have these 2 sets of qualities determined, I'm going to compare them and see whether or not they are compatible. Let's take a look at what makes Dark Sun unmistakably its own world that could never be confused with any other campaign setting released before or after. In 1991, the original Dark Sun box set was published. AD&D 2nd edition was dominated by medieval European fantasy settings. Now as then, Forgotten Realms was a huge piece of the pie, followed by Dragonlance and a fading Greyhawk. There had been a push to come up with something different, and out of that came Ravenloft as its own campaign setting, and Spelljammer. Neither of these 2 awesome settings fulfilled the mandate as completely as Dark Sun. It was so different from standard AD&D 2nd edition that it needed its own rules book just for character creation. On Athos, the world the Dark Sun campaign setting is based in, not only is the geography different, but the people are too. None of the races or classes from the 2nd edition Player's Handbook are the same. They have all been modified in some way. There are 1 race and 1 class from the Player's Handbook that were dropped completely. Those were the Gnome and the Paladin. They were replaced by 3 new races that eventually expanded into 6 races and 4 classes. Although one of those, the Psionics, did not originate in the Dark Sun box set, the classes and races that did remain from the Player's Handbook were all changed to fit the feel of the world. Dark Sun was the first campaign setting to fully implement Psionics. No other campaign setting before or since has integrated Psionics so completely. From having Psionics as a standard playable class and all player characters being wild talents, to most of the monsters having psionic powers and the high-level wizard or priest Psionics having super powerful spells unfathomable to lesser beings. Psionics were made an integral part of Dark Sun. Dark Sun was also the most deadly of all the campaign settings. It was so extreme that single-class characters started play at 3rd, not 1st level, and the character tree system was invented to share levels and have a spare character ready when a PC died. For more information about how character trees work, I'll put a link to my video about them in the description below. Everything about Athos is evil. It is a desert world full of super nasty psionic monsters run by immensely powerful wizard psionists that are as evil and corrupt as they come. When in the wilderness, dehydration is almost as big a threat as the hordes of foul beasts that roam the blasted dunes. Okay, from all this, things that you can say make Dark Sun what it is are: Number 1, unique or highly modified races. Number 2, unique or highly modified classes. Number 3, an all-in approach to Psionics that was present from a 1-hit dice plant monster all the way up to the 30th level Defiler Psionicist dragon that ran the world. It is an extremely deadly world. Even powerful characters stay on the ragged edge of death the majority of the time. Resource management, or at least awareness, was very important. If you ran low on water, spells, arrows, PSPs, or any number of other things that could spell the doom of your party. Most characters had to use weapons that were somewhat ineffective, at least until they could discover something better. That's if they lived that long. PC races were very hardy. and could have ability scores as high as 24 in some cases. Now that we have a handle on what Dark Sun is, let's take a look at what about the 5th edition core rules makes a game a 5th edition game. In character creation, backgrounds are very important. It can actually give you a mechanical leg up when you roleplay your character well. No other edition of D&D has made backgrounds a standard part of character creation. Also, during character creation, ability scores top out at 20, but can be raised as the character levels up. Bounded accuracy is the tool 5th edition uses to keep power creep under control. It is a novel way to get rid of penalties and allow only bonuses. This also simplifies and limits the amount of bonuses that can be stacked at any given time. Long and short rest. After a 1 hour short rest, a character can spend their hit dice to heal up to their maximum hit points, but would have to spend all their hit dice to do so. After an 8 hour long rest, all hit dice are recovered. One other new concept in 5th edition is the advantage-disadvantage rule. In certain situations, a DM may apply either advantage or disadvantage to a player's rolls. In both cases, the player in question rolls 2d20s instead of 1. If they have advantage, they get to keep the higher of the 2 rolls, while a player with disadvantage has to take the lower roll. This system replaces many of the situational modifiers present in other editions. The race and class system have evolved a lot over the last 17 years. There are a plethora of races that fit well in 5th edition's medieval or steampunk themes. The same is true of classes. They are custom fitted for a high magic, fast-paced style of game. Many classes have some magic, and none of them have a glaring weakness that cannot be fixed with a clever build. Finally, there is the idea of game balance. Although it is not unique to Wizards of the Coast designed editions of D&D, it is integral to the 5th edition system. It is used to make sure combat encounters are not so easy as to be boring, or so hard as to ensure that at least some of the party will die. Alright, so any 5th edition game should include at least a little bit of all of these. Number 1, backgrounds. Backgrounds are an important game mechanic as well as a role-playing tool. Number 2, advantage-disadvantage. This mechanic replaces many other bonuses. Number 3, bounded accuracy. Keeps everything moving in a positive direction and puts the brakes on power creep. Number 4, starting ability scores of 20 or less. This helps bounded accuracy do its job by ensuring PCs don't start out too powerful. Number 5, long and short rests. This makes sure the characters are healthy and ready to go another round quickly. This allows objectives to be pursued more single-mindedly. Number 6, balance. Keeps characters from getting in over their heads and helps the campaign steam right along. Number 7, the race and class system was tailor-made for the 5th edition style of game. Let's start with how the use of the background rules might affect a Dark Sun game. A special list of backgrounds that's particular to Athos would need to be made, but aside from that, nothing about the rules clash with the unique races of Athos. The same would apply for the unique or highly modified classes of the Dark Sun campaign setting. The all-in approach to Psionics would probably inspire many of the new backgrounds for Athos, as would the many tragedies that a world as deadly as Athos contains. Any new list would have to be carefully designed to ensure that it did not interfere with the scarcity of resources available to player characters. This is especially true of weapons. Starting level characters with steel heirloom weapons would be antithetical to the theme of the Dark Sun setting. Background rules should have little or no effect on the high ability scores of Athasian races. Now let's see how the advantage and disadvantage rules would work with the quintessential elements of a Dark Sun game. Playing the races of Athos would be little affected by the advantage and disadvantage rules. The same goes for the classes. There would be little effect. Depending on what psionic rules you use, the plus or minus 5 average of advantage might overwhelm that system. Because of this, you would want to use the advantage and disadvantage rules sparingly and in a balanced manner. The same should apply for any combat using advantage and disadvantage in the Dark Sun game. Resource acquisition through skills or proficiencies could be made laughably easy or damn near impossible if the advantage-disadvantage rules were not used carefully. Weapons made of inferior materials apply a -1 or a -2 penalty to their use. The -5 average of disadvantage is far too large. Many of the bonuses that come with high ability scores would be better suited for a Dark Sun game than the advantage-disadvantage rules would. Now let's see how well bounded accuracy would work in a Dark Sun game. The racial ability modifiers for Athasian races have both penalties and bonuses. This may not work well with bounded accuracy. Many of the classes apply both penalties and bonuses as well. Depending on the Psionics system you're using, there may be both negative and positive modifiers too. Random encounters work best for Dark Sun, but this does not fit well within the scope of bounded accuracy. Bounded accuracy would have little or no effect on the scarcity of resources in-game. Weapons made of inferior materials apply negative modifiers both to hit and to damage. This is outside the scope of bounded accuracy. The point of bounded accuracy is to prevent power creep. Characters starting with high ability scores pushes the limits of its ability to do so. Next up, let's take a look at starting play with ability scores of 20 or less. Several races of Athas can start with ability scores as high as 21 or even 24. This is outside the scope of this 5th E rule. None of the Dark Sun classes require scores higher than 20. So having starting scores of less than 20 will not interfere with playing any of them. This rule does not get in the way of using psionics in your game at all levels of play. Capping ability scores at 20 actually makes Dark Sun more deadly. Capping scores also has very little effect on resource scarcity. How weapons made of inferior material perform is not affected by capped scores. Many Athasian races have a +1 or a +2 to their ability scores. Half-giants are the extreme with a +4. This often pushes their scores above 20. The long rest, short rest, healing rules are up next. The unique races of Athas are more or less unaffected by the long rest, short rest rules, although it makes the double hit dice of the half-giant less significant. Classes are also little affected, except for the priests whose healing becomes less important. The recovery of psionic strength may be affected by the long rest, short rest rules. The long rest, short rest rules make Athas nowhere near as deadly. This completely undercuts the whole theme of the game. Because of this, the long rest, short rest rules have no place in a Dark Sun game. The long rest, short rest rules have little effect on resource scarcity. They also have no effect on the performance of weapons made of inferior materials. The long rest, short rest rules minimize the benefit that comes from the regeneration due to high constitution. Now the penultimate 5th edition concept, game balance. The only way game balance affects the races of Athas is by restricting their high scores. I'm covering that later on in this list, so I won't hold it against it now. Game balance has almost no effect on the various classes of Athas. An all-in approach to psionics would not conflict with the concept of game balance. The idea of a balanced encounter does not fit in a Dark Sun game. A party may run into 2 Gif one day and a Nightmare Beast the next. Game balance does not affect resource scarcity. Game balance has nothing to do with weapons made of inferior materials. The naturally high ability scores of Athasian characters is outside the scope of game balance. And finally, the 5th edition race and class system. The 5th edition races are not at all like the standard Dark Sun races. Goliaths and half-orcs do not make good stand-ins for half-giants and moths. Just like was done when Dark Sun was originally created in 2nd edition, the races will have to be completely revamped and will have to be new and unique to the campaign setting. Even more so than the races, the classes of 5th edition are completely dissimilar from those of the original Dark Sun classes. Just shoehorning them into existing 5th edition classes will not work. 5th edition does not have a fully functional psionic system, and what it does have is inappropriate for an all-in approach to psionics.
The races and classes of 5th edition would find Dark Sun just as deadly as it has ever been. The 5th edition race class system would have little effect on resource scarcity. The race class system would not affect weapons made of inferior materials. 5th edition races do not receive the extreme bonuses of the original Dark Sun races, so from the standpoint of high ability scores, they are limited. So what conclusions can we take away from this analysis? Mainly that 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is not at all well suited to support a proper Dark Sun game. The main theme of Dark Sun is incompatible with almost all of 5th edition's core concepts. My advice is to play Dark Sun as it was meant to be played, using AD&D 2nd edition. Using any other rules system changes the feel of the game so much that you're not really going to be playing Dark Sun anymore. Having said that, if you must play 5th edition and you want to convert Dark Sun to that system, you will need to do the following. Number 1, go back and read the 2nd edition source material. How can you expect to convert a rich and unique world like Dark Sun if you have only a perfunctory knowledge of it? Almost all the attempts at conversion I have seen smacked of ignorance of the original source material. At the very least, you should read these. As well as all of these. The later products were a mixed bag, and best just cherry-picked, so you could probably skip them. Of course, once you have all that under your belt, you may just decide to run a 2nd edition Dark Sun game. Number 2, if after doing all that you still feel the need to convert Dark Sun to 5th edition, you should start by throwing out some things. Bounded accuracy, ability score caps, long and short rest, game balance, and the 5th edition classes and races. All of these concepts are diametrically opposed to the core themes of the Dark Sun campaign setting. You still might be able to work in advantage and disadvantage, and as long as you came up with an Athos-specific list, backgrounds would be doable as well. To sum up my findings, trying to run Dark Sun using 5th edition rules or any Wizards of the Coast designed edition of D&D is a very bad idea. I hope you found this video helpful. Have a great day. I'll have more D&D costuming and LARP videos soon. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for watching.